Welcome everyone to the last event of the USF Swig program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice for the 2019-2020 academic year. Jews of Uganda. As we know, Jews are an amalgam of many peoples and include a multitude of ethnicities, languages, nations, and tribes. Although there have long been sub-Saharan African Jewish communities, little is known about them. Tonight we will learn with the Chief Rabbi of Africa, who is the spiritual leader of the Ugandan Jewish community, Rabbi Gershom Sizomu. My name is Camille Angel, and it's my honor and privilege to be part of this cutting-edge program, as well as to be serving this university full-time as its first campus rabbi. Situated in the university ministry office, I'm available to you individually as well as for classes and conversations, and in particular, LGBTQ pastoral care. Let me begin by thanking a number of people for their support for making this event possible. Thank you to all Swig Jewish Studies and Social Justice faculty and staff. And thank you to the Department of Theology and Religious Studies for co-sponsoring this event. I'd like to take a brief moment and tell you about our Swig program. Founded in 1977, our program is the first Jewish Studies chair or program at a Catholic university anywhere in the world. In 2008, we were reestablished as the Swig program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice, the first academic program worldwide to formally link Jewish Studies and Social Justice. Including a minor in this field in the classroom, the program offers a wide range of significant Jewish Studies courses not found in other educational settings. Beyond the classroom, we offer extraordinary events that are free and open to the public, such as this evening. Among our incredible lineup for next semester, we will have one thing that I'm particularly connected to and want to give a shout out to, our 11th annual Passover Justice Seder. Moving justice forward, this year's theme will be immigration, refugees, and the border. If you're a student and would like to join our working group that will start meeting once a week next semester, I would love to have you be part of this. If you'd like to learn more about our work, there are green booklets found at the entrance to this room, which you're free to take on your way out. You can also sign up to be put on our listserv. A sheet can be found next to green booklets. Through the Swig JSSJ program, we believe that education is the best long-term way to create systemic change, and systematically as well. Whether one has the time to take a semester-long course or a mere few hours to hear a single speaker, education is fundamental to making our world better, paramount in shining the spotlight on the margins, on oppressed communities who are mistreated merely because of their race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or another social identity altogether. Now, let me introduce tonight's speaker formally. Rabbi Gershom Sizomu is the first native-born black rabbi in sub-Saharan Africa, the chief rabbi of Uganda, and the first Jewish member of the Ugandan parliament. Rabbi Sizomu is the leader of the Abayudaya Jewish community, a 100-year-old community of approximately 2,000 Jews who live among their Christian and Muslim neighbors in scattered villages in eastern Uganda. Rabbi Gershom grew up during the devastating reign of Idi Amin, who outlawed Judaism. Given the Abayudaya, his extreme minority status, his priority is his community's security. As a visionary leader, Sizomu attended the 5-year Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies at the American Jewish University in Los Angeles from 2003 to 2008. As an ordained rabbi with a greater understanding of Rabbinic Judaism and connection to the organized Jewish community, he returned to Uganda to continue to bring safety and security to his community. Rabbi Sizomu is a senior rabbinic associate at the Hol Hashon, an American NGO that partners with the Abayudaya to improve health and economic development, providing access to clean water and mosquito nets, as well as building the Tobin Health Center in Nepal in 2010, which has reduced mortality from malaria by 90%. Improved healthcare and community development provided by the Abayudaya Jews to their Christian and Muslim neighbors fosters goodwill and helps combat anti-Semitism. A focus on interfaith cooperation paved the way of Rabbi Sizomu's election to the Ugandan parliament, which contributed to official recognition of the Abayudaya by the Jewish Agency in Israel in 2017. We're looking forward to hearing from you this evening, Rabbi, and celebrating with you your achievements, and we welcome you.
I'm going to be standing right here. Is it okay? Am I visible to the people behind? And am I audible?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. I am happy to be here tonight and speak to you about my community. As properly introduced by the rabbi, I am the spiritual leader of a community of native Ugandans who chose Judaism and self-converted themselves to Judaism in 1919. In the slideshow, we shall be seeing pictures of the community, and I will be speaking about what you see. But right now, the geography is that Uganda is surrounded by Kenya on the east, Tanzania on the south, Congo on the west, and Sudan on the north. That is a zoom in of Uganda, you can see. And the longest river on the continent, River Nile, begins in Uganda. So it is the source of the great River Nile. And the largest lake in Africa, Lake Victoria, is also located in Uganda. So those are the big geographical features of Uganda. And I live in a town called Mbale, which is located in eastern Uganda near the border with Kenya. It's about 5 hours of drive from Kampala, which is the capital, to Mbale. Our flag, that little, the bird inside is the crested crane. It's the symbol of our country. So, how did Abayudaya begin? The word Abayudaya is a Luganda word for the people of Yuda. You can see the word Yuda in that word. And Luganda is the language that we speak in Uganda. It's the main language, although English is the official language. English comes because we were colonized by the British, and the British made English the official language of Uganda. So our community started in 1919, 100 years from now, going backward. Okay, maybe 100 years ago, that's the better. So we just celebrated 100 years of existence this June, and it started by a gentleman who was a military general in the government of Uganda. His name was Semei Kakungulu, pictured there, and in that picture you can see his followers. The picture actually that was here before was of those people behind him. So he was a leader of the Abayudaya, because he founded it himself in 1919 after reading a Bible which was brought by Christian missionaries, and which the missionaries used as a tool for converting people to Christianity. He participated in translating the Bible from English to the local language Uganda. In that way, he learned and actually mastered most of the verses and the passages in the Bible. By 1919, he had discovered Judaism. And how did he do that? He read the 5 books of Moses, got interested in the story of Abraham, Lech Lecha, which starts on chapter 12. And he wanted to be Abraham. He circumcised himself like Abraham did, his sons, and began to observe the laws of Torah, arguing that Christianity had ignored the biggest part of the Bible. You know, the New Testament is like this, and then the Old Testament is big, so he did not see a reason why Christianity had abandoned the practices of the Torah. Yet, even in the New Testament, Jesus is heard saying that he has come to confirm the words of Moses, the Torah of Moses, and not to annul the teachings of Moses. So that was what drove him into becoming Jewish. So he began to observe the laws of the Torah as they are in the Torah, without rabbinic tradition. The rabbinic tradition, does everybody understand all the terms I'm going to be talking about? Kashrut? Everybody knows what kashrut is? Okay. So
Not in this class. No, you shouldn't.
I will explain some of them. I wanted to just check with you. Okay. So the rabbinic tradition actually explains how to observe Torah. For example, when the Torah says, "You shall not do any work on the 7th day," the word work or the term work must be defined. And so, what is work? Is eating considered work? Does playing football or any other game considered work? So the rabbis explained and actually defined what work was. They came up with 39 according to the Mishnah and the Talmud. But those reading the Bible like members of Abayudaya did not know how to define work. So they did it in their own way. For instance, they defined work as anything that you use your hands to do. So if you use your back or your feet, that is not work. So playing soccer or anything without using your hands was not considered work. So it is a close definition of work. But I will say it became increasingly difficult and to observe Torah, even with those definitions and interpretations. For instance, in the early 1920s and 30s, and even up to as early as 60s, they still observed the laws of sacrifice, because sacrifice is commanded in a particular relationship with the festival of Passover. So the Seder, which is a rabbinic tradition, is not written anywhere in the Torah. So they observed the Paschal lamb sacrifice. They would get a lamb, slaughter it, and sacrifice it as part of the observance of Passover. So that is an example of what they did. And the other one is they observed laws that connected to the temple, the laws of cleanliness and uncleanliness. So for instance, if you came in contact with a body, you became unfit for entry into their synagogue for 7 days, because that's what the Torah says. And women also every month would not go to the synagogue for 7 months. And you know, that kind of spiritual uncleanness is contagious. So if somebody touched the other would also be unfit. And so that's why it became actually increasingly difficult. But they explored their way through and observed the Torah as it says. In 1928, Semei Kakungulu died, and there was a challenge that after his death, there was no leader to lead our community. Many people converted to Christianity because Christian missionaries used schools to missionary schools as means of converting younger people to Christianity. If you were not Christian, you were not allowed. I'm happy that has changed throughout the world. This is a Christian school, but there are Jewish students here, Muslim students I've seen. So that was not the case in the early 20s when missionaries wanted Africa and Uganda in particular to become a Christian country. So we lost many people. In 1919 we had about 8,000, according to my grandfather who was there, 8,000 members of the community. But after the death, numbers reduced up to almost less than 1,000, because all young people went to Christianity, those who went to school, until a time when those who were very committed to Judaism said that they forbade their children from going to school. And that explains why most of the members of our community are subsistence farmers, because we don't have a history of education. We don't have a history. I was the first one to get a bachelor's degree in 1999. How many years? Maybe we'll say 8 years later. I was the first one to get a bachelor's degree because many people, many generations before me were forbidden to go to school, because if they went, they would convert to Christianity and the community would be no more. So that was a challenge after the death of the founder. But we continued to have challenges. This picture is sitting there of Idi Amin, Dada. Many of you who are younger than me may not know who I mean, but those who are older like me, how many people think I am old? You?
No,
I am older than you. So I was born 100 years after Kakungulu was born. Kakungulu was born in 1869. So you can guess when I was born. I was born a century after he was born, exactly a century. So I grew up during Idi Amin's time. He took power in 1971 by force. So there was a coup in Uganda. He became a president, and he only went to school up to maybe 4th grade. That man there was not very educated, but he managed to rule the country for 9 years because he used the force to do so. As a dictator, he actually killed so many people who refused to agree with him. So there was no voice of dissent in Uganda. If you disagreed with the president, firing squad. You know what firing squad is? There were so many in our country, and many young people had to leave the country and go to the neighboring Tanzania, and they started a rebel movement to fight against Idi Amin. Those of us who stayed, we suffered the consequences of his wrath, and as a community, Jewish community, he outlawed Judaism. He did not want to do anything with. He actually closed the Israeli embassy first and then outlawed Judaism. It was punishable by death to identify as a Jew or to engage in observance of Judaism in any form. I remember my father was arrested for building a sukkah, and those who don't know what a sukkah is, it is a temporary structure that Jews construct during a certain time of the year. It was recently in October, we celebrated the Sukkot. The law says you shall dwell in temporary structures for 7 days in remembrance of the exodus from Egypt. While they moved in the wilderness, they did not dwell in permanent structures. They were in temporary structures. It also teaches Jews the fragility of life. It's not only about building doors, but you sit under a temporary structure and you know that life itself is as temporary as the sukkah. And so in that way, you know what to do. So my father was arrested by a policeman who actually found him reading a Bible. He was studying the Torah under the sukkah. So that was considered observance of Judaism. He survived because the policeman accepted a bribe. So in exchange for my father's life, we had to pay 5 goats to the policeman, and then he left and then warned us never again do any form of practice. It was scary during that time. We were referred to as Christ killers everywhere we went. It became increasingly difficult to even relate with other people. The Muslims, the Christians, they all hated us because being a minority and that Idi Amin had decreed against us was very, very uncomfortable. But we continued to pray in the secrets of our bedrooms and to actually pray for the fall of Idi Amin. It came in 1979 when a combined force of Ugandan rebels who were in Tanzania and Tanzania military defeated him on the 11th day of April 1979. That day was Passover. I remember. I was in the 4th grade and it was my first time to go to a service. A first time to be amongst a group of Jews worshiping and celebrating. And we celebrated, I remember, in style because we drank 8 cups of wine. According to the law, Rabbinic law, you are supposed to drink 4 cups of wine. We doubled because it was double redemption. And that one had a mark on me because I thought as a young man, 1979, there was an event when Israeli soldiers flew all the way from Israel and detected and rescued Jewish hostages whose life was threatened by the Palestinian and German terrorists and supported by Idi Amin. So that successful rescue was a sign to us that God was listening. And we know it wasn't a coincidence that that plane ended in Entebbe, in a country where Judaism is outlawed, and that God sends salvation and redemption on Passover, on which we celebrate redemption from Pharaoh and from Egypt. That wasn't a coincidence to me. So I began to see God as a child, and I promised my father and my grandfather on my bar mitzvah in 1983 that I would become the next leader, the next rabbi after my grandfather and father. And that was my dream, since that time, and that dream came to pass in 2008. How many years? I cannot calculate very fast, but from 1983, or from 1979 to 2008, when I was ordained at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies in Los Angeles. After studying 5 years, and I had come with my family. It was an amazing experience, coming from a place where we don't have running water and electricity. We came to Los Angeles, and in our apartment in Bel Air. You know what I mean? In our apartment, we had everything. The well was no longer 2 miles away. The well was in the kitchen. Okay? The food was no longer in the gardens. The fire was not in the jungle. So no more collecting of firewood. So my kids were there. My wife said, "Where shall we cook from? This looks so clean. Where shall we put the firewood and the cooking stones?" The fire was right there. Everything was, you could lock yourself for a whole week in an apartment and everything would be fine. So we loved it here and we thought it was heaven. So you people in America, there's no other place to go. You are already in heaven. Okay? You cannot complain of anything. Okay, you are not allowed to complain. Everything is in order. So that is how it was, and living after my ordination, that was the end of our time. I had to go back to Uganda with my family. It was very difficult because everybody cried. Where are we going? We are going to a place where you could die of malaria, or you could die of drinking water that has typhoid and other illnesses, where already we had lost, in the 5 years of our time, we had lost many of our relatives. About 4 or 5 relatives had died of malaria. So everybody cried. And my wife was saying, "How can I take a dishwasher back home?" Those are some of the things you shouldn't, you know, you have a dishwasher, why should you complain? Cloth, you just get everything and throw in a machine, it rotates and your cloth is clean. There you have to wash piece by piece, and even drying you have to put it outside. If it is a rainy season like it is now, you might spend 3 days with cloth that is not yet dry. So we thought America was the best place to be, and we still think. I get the privilege to come and spend some time here and go back. But with the help, actually when I went back home, my Judaism, my land, I wanted to multiply it, and so we started a yeshiva, and I had an army of young people who were able to receive the knowledge Torah from Mount Sinai, and went back to them, and I have a support from them. They are knowledgeable and they are leaders. They studied with me for 4 consecutive years, and I committed myself during that time to do nothing but teach them. And so our community became even more knowledgeable with Torah. Oh, so politics, again, politics, okay. All right, let's talk about politics. That is me back home in Uganda running for political office. Why? Because I know what happened during Idi Amin's time. Idi Amin misused the political power, okay, to cause trouble and to many people in Uganda, not only the Jewish people. So I said, we needed political power for protection. You know, so when going back, I said our community needed political respect as well. So I stood for parliament in 2011, but I did not go through because my victory was stolen by government, because I ran against government. I tried again in 2016 and I succeeded. The reason I succeeded was because having suffered under anti-Semitism and hate, I actually wanted to mend bridges that were broken between my community and our Christian and Muslim neighbors. So when we went back home, we did not go empty-handed. From the many friends here who gave us help, we bought mosquito nets and distributed them to everybody, Christians, Muslims, without any discrimination, because mosquitoes don't discriminate when they bite. And that was a positive gesture. We spoke to the Christians and Muslims as friends and brothers and sisters. We drilled wells, 5 wells in 5 of our villages to save people from the other kind of water that kills the other one, to this one which is clean, drinkable water. And we opened up our wells, no restriction. Some wells were restricted to religions. Ours, we said, religion, water, drinking water, or access to health does not know religion. We are all human beings, irrespective of all these differences. These differences are just hindrances to our existence as humans. So we don't want to amplify them. I am a Jew, you are a Christian, you are a Muslim. I respect you not as a Muslim or Christian, but I respect you as a fellow human being. We have a lot in common than in difference. And that was a message that I gave to the Christians and Muslims, and they thought it was nice. They said, okay, much as you are a minority, I ran against Muslims and Christians, and my campaign managers were Muslims, because the area is predominantly Muslim. And I even had some imams and sheikhs who went on my campaign trail to say that this is the right man. And I kept my kippah on. I didn't want to hide anything. And it's the only kippah in parliament, because I wear it even to parliament. Actually, there was a member of parliament who wanted to raise a procedural matter why I was wearing one, but the speaker ruled in my favor. She said, Rabbi Gershom is a rabbi, and therefore entitled to his kippah. And everybody kept quiet. Nobody objected. So a kippah is a procedurally acceptable garment in the parliament of Uganda. Some of the things that we did that helped me get voted is that this is our main hospital in Mbale, and you could die there. Why? Because there is no the arrangement of in the hospital is that there is no space, and there are so many patients. So many times you could share a bed with somebody who is suffering from a different illness. And as you could see how crowded that is a ward, and is crowded like a market. So we started a clinic from the funds that we collected here, and we called it the Tobin Health Center, after Dr. Garrett Tobin, may he so rest in peace. He was the major force behind all these developments, but he unfortunately died a year before we opened that health center, and we named it after him. And since we opened that center, no one in our community, for 10 years, nobody has died of malaria. It's like for 10 years we have put a hold on malaria because of that health clinic. It helps not only the Jewish people, but also our neighbors. And the Dr. Banur is a Muslim, the doctor at our hospital. So we have opened up our community. We are not exclusive. We have not put a fence around us. We are free. And this also has improved our image amongst those who would choose Judaism. And so we have so many converts. We have so many people converting to Judaism because of the nature of how we conduct ourselves. So this is part of what I'm talking about. All these had come for conversion. So every year we have people who convert to Judaism. In this particular year, we converted 250 people. For a whole week, it was busy. Every day we would take people to the mikvah. They all had come and wanted to be part of our community. And our synagogue became even small, as you see. That is not what we have. We had to tear it down because we needed bigger space. And with the help of our friends here in the US, we got money to begin the construction of a bigger synagogue, which looks like that now. So the other one has been replaced and it looks like this. And we are very happy to have this new space for a synagogue. That's how it looks like inside. And I think it's the only of the kind in the village. It is in the village where there is no much electricity and running water, but it's a good building. We are happy to be in it. It is a holy space for us. So recently we had a wonderful celebration of 100 years, and being a government official, I invited the Speaker of Parliament, and she was not able to come, but sent a Minister of Environment and Water to represent her as the chief guest. And we had the vice president of the Jewish agency in Israel. He traveled from Israel to come. We had the head of the Masorti movement. We had the friends and supporters from the United States of America. And over 5,000 people turned up for the event. Majority of them Muslims and Christians, because our community is not more than 2,000, but we had more than 5,000. And we cooked a lot of food. And we had drinks, and it was a wonderful celebration. Andrew was there, so unfortunately you don't have a micro, you would have spoken about your experience, but maybe when they ask questions, you can talk about your experience. This is my support group from the United States, and I hosted them at Parliament. I think this is the Parliament, right? Yes, I hosted them at Parliament. They had a tour of Parliament, and they were Jews, and they were around in the precincts of Parliament. They even went into a place where only members of Parliament are supposed to be. The Speaker opened it up, and my guests went into the parliamentary chambers and sat on, they were at the desk of Parliament. What I'm talking about is we had a very nasty experience with anti-Semitism during Idi Amin, and even after Idi Amin. But as I said, I used that as an opportunity to reach out to the people and to teach them that Jews are not different. Christians are not different from Muslims. We are all one people. And actually my party, my political party, which is the Forum for Democratic Change, has a slogan of one people, one Uganda. that we are all one people and we have one nation called Uganda. So I loved that, and people actually adapted that slogan as well. And that's how we are able to have those who are covering themselves are Muslim women, we have a Jewish woman, we have Christians celebrating and laughing and, living together in peace and unity. We have schools, and in our schools we accept our Christian and Muslim neighbors without compelling them to convert to Judaism. We don't, in Judaism we don't say, please convert. We don't force people. When you come on your own. And it's about your choice. But nobody, no leader will say, please convert to Judaism. No. Please. That's the end of the slides. I thought there was another one, but that's the end of the story actually. If I have left anything, I will be able to answer some of the questions from you so that we can leave here with the complete picture of Abayudaya. But before you ask, I want to invite you to come and visit our community. I have been to this school several times. Now it is your turn. Please come, I will be your host, and come and experience not only Judaism, but how we work well with our Christian and Muslim neighbors. Thank you so much for your attention.
We have some time for questions. So Professor Krolzevin and I will run around and give you the mic. You can speak into it if you're happy for the work. Then we have a video.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering how come there was anti-Semitism in Uganda since essentially there were no Jews. What was the origin of why it developed? Was it from the missionaries?
I don't know if I understand your question clearly. So in other words, you are saying who taught people to hate Jews? Okay, so I told you that we were considered Christ killers. So somehow Christianity taught their people that Jesus was killed by the Jewish people, which is not true, because Jews don't kill by crucifixion. We have studied the methods of killing. The first method Jews use is stoning, right? Yes, that is in the Torah. In the books they say skira, stoning. The other one is strangling. But we don't have crucifixion. Anyway, there is that thing called crucifixion amongst the methods. So where do you find crucifixion? It's the Romans. So for us, we grew up knowing that Jesus was Jewish, and there was no reason why Jews would kill their king. Actually, the reason Jesus was killed was because the Romans wrote on the cross, Jesus, king of the what? Why should we kill our king? So the king of the Jews was a threat to the Romans because they were the occupying power. So, but nevertheless, somebody sort of misguided our population into thinking that the good Jesus who came to save people was killed by the Jewish people. So that's one way. The Muslims used the word Yahudi. I don't know. They use it as a derogatory statement. Yahudi. Even in Uganda right now, a Muslim, if the Muslim calls you Yahudi, that means they are mad at you. you better run away, they are about to kick you if you say Yahudi in Uganda. So they use the word Yahudi as some kind of abuse. If they are mad at each other, they call each other Yahudi. You are Yahudi, get out of here. So we don't know where the hatred came from with the Idi Amin, but I will say right now we are quite good friends, as I said, as I already stated. There's no much anti-Semitism. So I am a teacher against anti-Semitism. Just teaching and making people realize that we have more in common and that we have to celebrate that instead of focusing on what actually divides us. Because we are actually different, right? We are different, even if you are from the same country, even America, I don't see uniformity. No, God is not interested in uniformity. It would be boring. I wouldn't be here speaking before you, right? Because then you would know I would be the same. Everything would be the same. Flat. Very boring. We need those differences so that we can admire each other, right? So we can learn from each other. Okay.
How did your community develop its liturgical services? How did you use your music from your community and the music of you would have learned at the Ziegler School? How is music expressing your Judaism and your Abayudaya-ness? And how did you work all that as a community to make it yours?
Wonderful, thank you. One of the things that make our community different from other Jewish communities mainly is the music. We developed our own music traditions by putting African melodies and rhythm on Jewish prayers. So we have Hebrew songs that are sung in an African style. So we fused the two, and it is quite different. It's one of the things that I invite you to come and experience, how we sing during Kabbalah Shabbat, during services. Other things we have adapted the Ashkenazic traditions, for instance, of reading Torah and Haftorah, and some other prayers like Kiddush, but Psalms and other songs and prayers are sung with an African drum and melodies and rhythm.
So during the dictatorship, there was a disconnect with especially after your father was arrested and basically bribed.
Yeah.
So the question was, to paraphrase, correct me if I'm wrong, basically, never mind. Let's try it again. On preamble, maybe. All right, just project it out there.
So during Idi Amin's dictatorship, and him, killing so many people of your faith, did you ever feel like a disconnect? Like, if your life's on the line and your father was also, threatened, did you ever want to stop practicing your religion at all?
Very good question. We actually felt a disconnect. Everybody felt a disconnect. A few of us who held on to this religion were because we were closely connected. We were from the leading families. My grandfather was the rabbi. My father was also a rabbi. So we came from those rabbinic circles of leadership. And leaders don't want to give up, because once they give up, everybody gives up. A leader gives up at the end, right? A star in the movie probably doesn't die. If they have to die, they die at the end of the movie. Because if they die before the movie does what? Ends. So that's how we did, but it was perseverance. It was just perseverance. But nobody would risk their lives observing under the reign of Idi Amin.
Are there Jews in other parts of Africa, and how do you relate to each other? Do you get together? Are there conferences?
That's a good question. There are Jews in other parts of Africa, and I think you mean there are the black Jews, because you must know that there are Jews in South Africa with synagogues and yeshivot and so on, right? So if that's what you mean, the only community that is functional as a Jewish community is the one I lead in Uganda. There are tribes in Africa that consider themselves part of the lost Jewish, part of the lost tribes of Israel. One of them, the Lemba in Nigeria, over 40 million. They all think that they are Jews, although they don't practice Judaism. But in their culture, they do circumcision at a certain age. They also don't eat certain animals and birds. So they observe some in part of their culture. But they consider themselves Jews. The only difference is that there is no, they have no synagogues, they have no schools, they have no rabbis, they have no functional Jewish community. And one of my dreams was, how can I help them? But that is, it requires tremendous amount of resources to be able to establish places where we can educate them or maybe teach their leaders, construct synagogues and schools and so on. So there is another group in South Africa and Zimbabwe called the Lemba. For them, it is scientifically established that their genetic makeup is very close and similar to that of the priests, the Kohanim. But they also have traditions of observing kashrut and also blowing the shofar. They blow the shofar at some time and they do circumcision. They also don't mix meat and milk together. So those are the Lemba in South Africa. They also don't have synagogues. They don't have functional Jewish life. Many of them are Christians and Muslims, but nevertheless consider themselves part of the lost tribes of Israel.
Hey, thank you for coming to share your story. So my question is, which denomination or movement is your Jewish community part of? Like for example, in the US, they are Orthodox, Reform, and Conservative, I guess.
Wonderful. That question is always asked me. In Uganda, we did not know about those denominations until I came to Rabbinic school. And I ended up in a conservative seminary. It's not working. I will raise my voice, but maybe you need to switch this on. And we are sharing the same light. Okay. So I did not know the many differences of denominations, but I ended up coming to a conservative yeshiva, and I became a conservative rabbi. I went back home and taught my people to be conservative Jews. So, but then there is a group of us that broke our way, because conservative Judaism permits women to lead the services and to participate in synagogue leading. So there were people who said, no, we don't want a woman to lead us in prayer. A woman cannot read Torah. A woman cannot stand up there. And we said, okay, bye. And then I said, those of you who are comfortable with the women, stay back. And women in our synagogue, women can lead. Why should we pretend that women don't exist when they are the ones that give birth to us, the men? We are part of those women until we become men, right? When we are children, it is mama, mama, mama. So I said, those of you who think it is a serious sin that a woman is leading a service, please, you are free to leave. And so we have an Orthodox community in Uganda, breaking away from the main community because we accepted women to do what men do. Okay?
I have another question. So for a lot of Jews around the world, they have a special connection with the land of Israel. Does your
With what?
With a special connection with the land of Israel.
Yes.
Does your people have a special connection with, and what would that connection be?
Okay. It's like you have to switch. All right, and the question is about a special connection to the land of Israel. We think in Uganda, we think that the best place to be as a Jew is Israel. So Israel is a home, a spiritual home for every Jew, wherever they are. Because that is a place where being Jewish is not a question. Nobody will ask you why or what. Although when I was there, they usually ask me, are you Jewish? Actually, I am, maybe because I don't look Jewish as they think. So it's the only place where I was asked, are you Jewish? But it is considered a place where Jews can comfortably observe Judaism.
You spoke about how the experience you had as a child with your father, would you say that that will affect or has affected the way that you welcome people in? Did that make you more or less question due to the fact that previously, things just don't disappear, and how did that impact you and your community?
Yeah, if I understand you properly, the mistreatment of Jewish people during Idi Amin's time and after Idi Amin gave us and inspired us to create peaceful relationship. So it has influenced how we act. We have to give the best, If you want to get the best from the people, you must give, right? You cannot expect to be treated well if you don't treat others well. So we want to give that good treatment and hospitality so that we can receive it, because you receive what you give.
I don't need a mic. I don't think so. You mentioned you have children. Do you see your son following your footsteps and the footsteps of your father and grandfather being rabbi and a leader?
Yes, I have 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. One of my girls wants to follow my footsteps. Maybe we will have another leader breaking the line of men leading our community. Yes. Yeah, she's right there. She's making challah for Shabbat. Exactly.
I'm alright.
Are you loud?
You said you guys practiced in private. Did you know others in your community that practice in private as well? And when you guys were able to practice publicly, did you see
Can you
it?
repeat so that everybody hears? I've switched off mine.
You said you practiced in private. When you were allowed to practice publicly again, did you see a substantial increase in the amount of people that you knew that practiced as well?
Okay, very good. Now you switch off yours. Okay. When we practiced in privacy, we did so because we feared for our lives. Because Idi Amin had decreed that anyone found practicing Judaism would be put to death. So that was the punishment for practicing. So that's the reason we went underground. After the fall of Idi Amin, there was declarations of freedom of worship. So the freedom of worship was granted to us, and there was no reason for continued secret practice of Judaism. There was no reason. And we have benefited from that freedom of worship to the present day. No other government has outlawed or forbidden us from practicing Judaism after Idi Amin.
How many people at that point in time, when it was now illegal again, were in your community identified as Jewish?
Actually, we had held a census in 1980 after fall of Idi Amin, and we were not more than 300 in 1980. So we've been growing from less than 300 to about 2,000 now.
This question back here. Shane, hold on.
Oh, that was somebody.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? No, turn it on. Get it.
Hello? Okay. Rabbi, thank you so much for your talk. I really appreciate you being here with us. I have sort of a two-part question. So my first part is, you mentioned how Israel is sort of this safe haven for Jews, but I want to know how you would reconcile sort of the fact that Israel is sort of discriminating against a lot of African Jewish refugees and also actively trying to deport them. And they're kind of held in a little bit of a second-class citizenship. And my second part question is, you mentioned this really beautiful values of humanity and human dignity and respecting each other regardless of religion and race. And I just want to know how you reconcile that with Israel's crimes, how you reconcile that with Palestinians, how you reconcile that in the face of the other. And in a place where Palestinians are dehumanized, and I want to know how you reconcile that with your values and why you support Israel if those are your values. Thank you.
Wow. Have you turned that off? Okay. That's a tough question. I don't know if I will have a good answer for you. First of all, I want to say that I don't believe in discrimination because I don't discriminate. So if there are people in Israel who do discrimination, that's not what I support. I support Israel as a land of the Jewish people, but I don't support anyone who does wrong in Israel. So Israel is not only the people who do wrong, but Israel is a place where there are people who do right and those who do wrong. I don't support Palestinians who kill Jews by blowing them up. Neither do I support Jewish people, if there are Jewish people who kill Palestinians who are innocent. But if they kill Palestinians who are pursuing, according to I am a good person, but if you slap me here, I don't turn the other cheek. I actually box you and kick you. Because, yeah, I know, and that is the Jewish way. Maybe we don't turn the other cheek. So your question is quite very good, but we need to understand that the tension between Palestinians and Israelis is not a tension of religion. It's not a religious tension. something else, and it can happen anywhere. Because even in Uganda, we have political tension where I am in the opposition and there is government, and we have those with power trying to subjugate us who are not in power. And it is political tension. In Africa, political tension can go to the extent of killing each other. You get it? It is not only in Israel. It can be anywhere where there is tension. And we can only look for ways of decreasing that tension and making sure people realize how to live together peacefully. Does that help to give my opinion? Yes, that's. Yes. Okay. So in this picture, he's the president of Uganda. His name is Yoweri Museveni. He is actually a supporter of Israel, but he has stayed in power for 35 years. And he's not about to leave. And because I think, even if he supports Israel, I don't support him. Why? Because overstaying in power would lead to civil unrest and political instability in the future. So I am urging him to give up power so that we have a peaceful transition from him to another person. And that's the reason I'm in the opposition to him. Much as he's a friend of the Jewish people, he's actually a friend of us and Israel.
We read the article.
Somebody is, yes, of course, definitely. The reason I'm in political power, I'm a politician, is because I have those aspirations. But right now, the objective will be for him to leave power first, because he has not put a level ground. Even for as a member of parliament, you could win an election and the loser is declared the winner. So the ground is still not very conducive. But I will announce that you will still be alive. You will still be alive, and probably you will be able to help raise some funds for. Yes.
Thank you for the privilege of a second question. What is the hope you have for the next 20 years, the next 50 years, the next 100 years for your community?
The main hope I have for our community is this is our time to think about transitioning from subsistence farming, which has caused a vicious cycle of poverty. And we want to break that, and it has become a barrier. So we want to break that barrier so that our people can engage in enterprise, so that they can have resources to take their children to school, so that we can grow, not only in numbers, but grow also in action and capacity and quality.
Thank you for coming, Rabbi. My name is Mika Levinsky. My mother is an African-American Jew. So I'm really pleased to see a black rabbi here in the room. Thank you very much. I used to work in global HIV work, and Uganda has had some really repressive laws for LGBT people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and other sexual and gender minorities. A lot of that comes from the Christianity that is taught, and some of the Islam as well. And so I know you do not stand for discrimination. Thank you. And you work in Parliament. Thank you. How can you support our brothers and sisters and other siblings who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or gender minorities who are in Uganda and are struggling for their existence, no matter what their religious background is. I ask because I'm also a gay identified Black Jew. Thank you.
Wow, a gay Black Jew.
Are you safe?
There are a few ones.
All right. Okay. When the law was passed in Parliament that criminalizes gay and lesbianism, I wasn't in Parliament. That's the term. I was cheated, so I wasn't there. And when they passed that law, it was repealed maybe 6 months or 1 year after. What does that mean? That there is a consciousness and a realization that it is wrong to criminalize people along sexual orientation lines. So that one has already been realized. So much as there is a lot of anti-gay and anti-lesbianism talk in Uganda, I don't think that a law will ever be made that criminalizes. And if it comes up, I'll be able to speak up at the risk of being called myself gay. You know, in Uganda, once they put that label on you, they want to shut you down. And everybody, it is a D-campaign. But I'm not alone. We have some members of parliament and some people in Uganda that know that discrimination is bad. So I don't think there will be if there will be a law, it might be a law against public expression and marriage. Because marriage is also a public expression. But it will not go beyond that in this first phase of it. But I don't think there will be a law that says if you are caught to be gay or lesbian, they will put you to jail or kill you. No, it will not happen. So, and right now we have people who are gay who come to Uganda because there is no law. Apparently, that law was repealed.
Any last questions? All right, thank you so much.